everyone, my name is Jenny. Welcome back to my channel and welcome if you're new. I am doing the mid-year check-in tag today. That tag was created by Harriet of Harriet Rosie and Dane of Dane Reads in 2018, and a few people have been redoing it again this year, and so I would like to join in and just evaluate where my reading is going this year so far. So as I'm recording this, it is June 21st, the official first day of summer, and I am really excited to just chat a little bit about how my reading has changed this year. So the first question is, how many books have you read so far this year? And I have read 38 books. Now, this is quite something for me, and that is because my yearly goal was 40 books. And I am a little bit surprised and delighted that I've been able to already reach my yearly goal by midway. And I think there were a few reasons that this has happened. One of them is I have structured my reading quite heavily, more heavily than I ever had before. And that's definitely an influence of being part of BookTube. And so I was really surprised when I looked at this and realized that I'd already reached my goal, and I could potentially double my goal this year if I continue on the same path. So that is a really interesting and exciting development of this new way that I've been reading for the last almost 6 months. So I'm quite pleased by that. Question 2 is, what is your favorite book so far this year? I struggled a little bit with this because I would say I have 3 books that are in my top 3, and they're kind of equally spaced. But if I was talking about a book that affected me the most deeply and has stayed with me the longest, and that I loved, and I felt there was no part of it that could have been improved upon, that would be The Lie by Helen Dunmore. I just adored that book, and it has stayed with me, and I have not read anything so far that has quite topped it, although 2 came very, very close. What was your most disappointing read so far of 2019? The most disappointing read for me was The Strays by Emily Bitto. I was very disappointed in that story. On paper and description, it was my perfect read. It ticked all the boxes of a story that I would have loved, and in the end I just found it very disappointing, even though there were parts of it that I did enjoy. But overall it was just a book that I didn't enjoy, and I did do a review of The Strays, and I will link that video in the description box down below. What genre have you read the most this year? It's definitely fiction. I am still doing nonfiction, poetry, and but I would say I definitely have read fiction the most, and that is, just bound to continue. I doubt I will ever read any other genre more than fiction in my reading life. Number 5, a new favorite author. So out of the top 3 books that I've read this year, all of the books for me were first time reading these authors. So it was my first Helen Dunmore, The Wonder by Emma Donoghue, my first time reading Emma Donoghue, and Exit West by Mohsin Hamid was my first time reading Mohsin Hamid. And so I did pick Mohsin Hamid as my new favorite author. I took all the books that my library had that he'd written and put them on my list to read, but I would definitely say that I want to read more Helen Dunmore, and I want to read more Emma Donoghue, so the 3 of them are really tied for that honor so far this year. Number 6 is, what book did you find surprisingly good, or what book surprised you by being one that you liked this year? And I wrote down Milkman by Anna Burns for that one. I think because it was a book that had so much hype around it, so many voices saying so many things, that I was very intrigued, but also doubtful that I would enjoy it. And I really did enjoy it. It to me is an excellent book, award-worthy book. And again, I did review that book along with The Strays. It was the same video, so that is linked down below if you're interested to hear more of my thoughts about it. I do think that that book received a lot of subpar reviews where people really didn't tell you what the book was about, just told you how challenging it was to read, and I mostly did not agree with those reviews. So if you're interested in hearing more about that, it is linked down below. Number 7, what are your most anticipated 2019 releases coming up in the last part of the year? I find this question really hard to answer. I don't really spend a lot of time perusing publishers' websites or release lists. I did go through a few for an upcoming video for my TBR for July, and I did put a couple new releases on there, but I would say that overall I don't really look forward and try to predict new releases very much. I think it might be something that I do more in the future, that I get used to and that I try out a little bit more, is reading more new releases. Because I get most of my books from the library, that can be challenging because you have to go onto a wait list for a book and it could take weeks and weeks and weeks for you to get it. And I tend to be very strategic in how I read books, but I'm starting to feel like I can work that into my scheduling, so it may be something that I do pay more attention to. Great, is what is your next big reading priority for the year? There's 2 things that I would really like to do coming up. One of them is continue to work on my TBR list from the library, which is very, very long. It's over 500 books. And then I do have a physical TBR collection at home as well. So I'm, continuing to strategically work through that. I really didn't anticipate that I would enjoy reading this way. I guess I should have anticipated it because I am a person that likes lists, and I like one of the pure joys for me in reading is to sit down and look at the month ahead and think about what I have been reading, what I would like to read, any books that have caught my attention recently. Also, I really enjoy just going through the books and looking at the covers and rereading the synopses and just remembering what it was about that book that compelled me to put it onto my list in the first place, whether I heard about it on a podcast, whether I heard about it on BookTube, whether it was a recommendation from a friend, whether it was just a random find. So that is, I find, really relaxing, really fun, just something full of pure joy. There's no pressure. I don't feel anxious about it. I don't feel stressed. It's just a lovely, relaxing thing for me to do, just go through the list. So I'm really excited about continuing to do that. I'm sorry if I look like I'm in a different position. I just had to go serve up ice cream for the play date downstairs. Okay, continue to strategically read and go through the list more often so that I remember the books and that I'm really reading a wide variety of books from a wide variety of genres, but also different subject matters written by different people and sharing different types of experiences. I ended up reading several books in a row that were coming of age stories, and it was quite by accident. I just hadn't really analyzed the synopses well enough to tell that that was what was happening. And unfortunately, I find that it was tainting my reading experience a bit because I get tired of hearing the same voice too much, and so that kind of coming of age ambivalence and challenge started to grate on my nerves, and I think affected my enjoyment of some of my books that I was reading. So I need to really make sure that I'm reading a broad spectrum of experiences, to keep those stories, to give those stories their due when I'm reading them. And the other thing I'd like to do this year, which I think will be happening in November, is to sign up to be a judge for the BookTube Prize. That is run by Robert from Barter Horde's channel, and I've been following along, watching a lot of the judging videos, and watching as the books have been getting further and further along. And I find it a really fun and interesting process to watch, and I think I'd enjoy participating. I think there's some people who find they're disappointed when their books don't go forward, especially if they really dislike one of the books that they read and it moves forward. But I think I could handle that. I think it would be a really interesting experience to have, at least for one round in the future. And I know that Robert is planning to expand the prize, and he needs more judges to make it as broad as possible. And so I'm really excited to be able to participate in that in the future. Number 9 is, what is a bookish highlight so far from 2019? I would say just this experience of creating videos for BookTube. I haven't yet been creating videos for a year. After the summer, September will be a year, and I'm learning so much about myself and about how I read and about what ways, what things fill me up, what things make me feel stressed, all around reading, making videos, and participating in the community, and meeting people and connecting with people. I think when you first start BookTube, you feel a lot of pressure to form friendships and to form friend groups, and to kind of find your place. And you get a little bit anxious when you see all these other friendships that are already formed, and relationships and buddy reads and all these things. But it really does take time, and that's the only way that you can form these connections, is to just let them organically unfold on their own and not try to force them. And so I've just been trying to be really laid back about that and let those relationships develop, and they have, and they are, and it's really fun. And it's just such a joy to talk about books, even when there are dramatic things that happen, or unfortunate things that happen in the community. I think there's still this sense of connection and support that overrides those general feelings, where people kind of feel this need to work through issues, such as there was the issues of sexual harassment that have been happening over the last few weeks. And I think that seeing the community, and how the community has reacted, has been overall, I think, a really positive thing to witness and be a part of, because that this is the real world, and BookTube is the real world, and real world problems will come into BookTube, and it's a matter of working together as a team and coming to find a place where we can acknowledge issues and support each other, and create a society that is inclusive and welcoming to everyone who wants to be here. The last question is, who do you tag? And again, as a new booktuber and forming new relationships, you really don't know who does tags, who doesn't do tags, and why, etc., etc. I've never actually been tagged in a tag. I just kind of look for tags and do them when I find the questions interesting. So if you enjoy these questions, and if you haven't done this tag, then please do it. I'm always interested to hear about people's check-ins and what they've been reading and how they feel their year is going. So far, I'm having a pretty good reading year, and I feel excited to go into the second half of the year and continue on my plans and see what ends up happening at the end of the year. So I just also wanted to add that I am pretty much on track for the challenges that I've set myself. I'm doing the Reading Through the Ages bingo card, and I believe I've read half of the books. So I set 10 books up that were going to, 10 spots that I was going to fill, and I have read 5 of them so far. So I have the last 5 to finish, and I am really pleased with how much fun the process is being. So thank you very much for watching, and I will be back again soon with another video of bookish content.